At exactly 0507 hours local time, the night sky over Iran's central military district split open with a sound that shook windows 30 miles away. A formation of Israeli F-35 Yadir stealth fighters, operating at combat ceiling with E-2D Hawkeye overwatch from the Mediterranean, had just executed one of the most surgically precise decapitation strikes in the history of modern aerial warfare. The target, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Navy, the man personally responsible for weaponizing the Strait of Hormuz and turning the world's most critical oil choke point into a killing ground. The strike package used 4 GBU-39B small-diameter bombs released from stealth profile at standoff range, guided by a combination of GPS-INS precision and infrared terminal seekers updated in real time by a Heron TP UAV loitering overhead at 50,000 feet. The bombs impacted within a 7-meter radius of one another, collapsing 3 floors of the IRGC Naval Command Annex inside the Isfahan Revolutionary Guard compound. IRGC communications went dark in under 2 seconds. 12 senior naval officers were dead before the smoke cleared. The Admiral's encrypted communications terminal, a modified Russian-supplied system capable of issuing launch authorizations to submarine commanders in the Gulf, was physically destroyed. But this was not a surgical strike that ended the threat. It was the act that ignited it. At 0512 hours local time, just 5 minutes after the Isfahan strike, Iranian strategic rocket force launch crews across 7 provinces simultaneously received the code word that every ISTAR analyst in the region had been dreading: Operation Scorched Tides. Within 90 seconds, 81 Fateh 313 solid-fuel ballistic missiles and 36 Shahed 136 loitering munitions were already climbing their boost phase arcs toward Israel in the USS Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group, operating southeast of On the bridge of the USS Carl Vinson, the AN Spy-6 air and missile defense radar painted the sky crimson red on every tactical display simultaneously. The Aegis combat system on the destroyer USS Stockdale, operating as the strike group's primary fire control node, entered automatic engagement mode without waiting for human authorization. The Burke-class destroyer's 48-cell VLS batteries began spooling. Standard missile 3-block 1IA interceptors came alive in their vertical launch tubes, the pre-launch pressurization sequence generating a sound like compressed thunder rolling across the flight deck. At the same time, 300 miles away, the 82nd Airborne's advance element, just hours off C-17 airlifters onto Ali Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait, began emergency shelter procedures as IRGC drone swarms started probing Gulf perimeter defenses. Patriot PAC-3 batteries lit up their radar arrays, and the sky above the base became a lattice of counter-drone engagements from MPADS Avenger systems fighting a high-volume asymmetric engagement at ranges under 5 kilometers. The real trap had been set before the missiles even launched. At 0509 hours local time, a window calculated to exploit the confusion of the initial Iranian missile barrage. 3 IRGC Hudong-class fast attack craft and a single Yugo-class midget submarine operating in shallow water off Keshem Island had begun deploying EM-52 rocket-propelled mines across the northern shipping lane of the Strait of Hormuz. These were not passive contact mines. The M-52 is a rocket-rising mine. It sits on the seafloor, detects the acoustic and magnetic signature of a passing vessel, then fires a shaped charge payload upward at over 50 meters per second. A single detonation beneath the keel of a laden VLCC supertanker generates a pressure wave capable of breaking the vessel's back. The IRGC's strategic calculation was brutally rational. If the US Navy moved to enforce transit through the strait using surface assets, they would be threading warships through a 6-mile-wide mine corridor with no room to maneuver. The Yugo-class submarine, designated by NATO analysts as Gadir Unit 7, carried 12 additional mines in its forward weapons bay and had positioned itself directly beneath the path of the USS Boxer amphibious ready group. Still 3 weeks out from the Gulf, but whose approach vector was no secret. In the Combat Information Center of the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer USS Roosevelt operating in the northern Gulf, a sonar technician second class picked up the characteristic low-frequency acoustic signature of mine-to-deployment activity at 0518 hours. He ran the acoustic fingerprint through the AN and SQQ-89 Surface Ship Underwater Warfare Suite. The match probability came back at 93%. The Roosevelt's commanding officer immediately broadcast over Link 16 Tactical Data Network, Romeo Uniform November, the code word for confirmed mine warfare activity in a transit corridor. 2,000 ships, 20,000 seafarers. Every tanker in the strait was now trapped between an invisible underwater killing field and a regime that had just told the world it was charging transit fees at gunpoint. The American answer to Scorched tides came not as a single retaliatory strike, but as an orchestrated cascade of simultaneous actions across 5 domains that the IRGC had not modeled in any of its war games. At 0521 hours local time, a pair of B-21 Raider stealth bombers operating from Diego Garcia, their first combat employment in a contested maritime environment, received targeting updates via the E-11 Battle Management Communications aircraft and turned onto attack headings for the Bandar Abbas Naval Complex. The B-21's low observable signature generates a radar cross-section smaller than a hummingbird. Iranian Bavar 373 air defense systems along the coast never generated a track. The bombers released 8 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators from standoff range, targeting the underground bunker complex where IRGC Naval Coordination Cells had relocated after the Isfahan strike. The hardened facility had been designed to survive conventional strikes. The GBU-57, at 30,000 pounds of precision-guided steel and high explosive, is not a conventional weapon. At the same moment, 2 U.S. Navy MH-60R Seahawk helicopters from the USS Stockdale deployed AN/AQS-22 airborne low-frequency sonar arrays over the northern strait, actively pinging the suspected mine deployment corridor. The Seahawks communicated targeting data to a pair of MH-53 EC Dragon mine countermeasures helicopters from HMSD-30 out of Bahrain, which had already been on alert since Roosevelt's Romeo Uniform November broadcast. The corridor clearing operation would take hours. But in the meantime, the U.S. Navy did something that the IRGC had not anticipated. It didn't try to clear a path through the mines. It went under them. The USS North Carolina, a Virginia-class fast-attack submarine operating at 250 feet, below the keel depth of the M52 mine threat, received a targeting package at 0524 hours local time and activated its AN/BYG-1 combat management system. The North Carolina had been quietly tracking Ghadir Unit 7 for 11 hours, using its AN/BQQ-10 sonar suite to stay outside the Iranian submarine's detection envelope while remaining close enough for a fire control solution. The Iranian commander believed he was alone in the deep water. He was not. At 0531 hours local time, Ghadir Unit 7 completed its mine deployment run and began its withdrawal toward the Iranian coastal shelf, a textbook retrograde to safety. Its commander executed a classic sprint and drift evasion pattern, running at maximum speed for 90 seconds, then going silent to listen. What he heard instead of silence was a single AN/BQQ-10 active sonar ping from the North Carolina. Close, deliberate, and perfectly calculated. In underwater warfare, an active sonar pulse at close range from a Virginia-class submarine is the acoustic equivalent of a gun pressed against the back of the skull. It tells the target commander 3 things with absolute clarity. I found you. I have been tracking you. I can kill you before you can react. The Ghadir's commanding officer had exactly one option that did not end with his crew dying in a flooding pressure hull at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. He blew his ballast tanks and surfaced. The IRGC submarine broke the surface 300 meters off the port bow of the USS Roosevelt. Its crew emerged onto the hull with hands raised. In the Combat Information Center of the North Carolina, the crew watched their first real-world combat prosecution end not with a torpedo in the water, but with an enemy submarine commander making the only rational choice available to him. Above the waterline, the story was less bloodless. At 0527 hours local time, while the North Carolina was executing its sonar confrontation, the 3 IRGC Hudong-class fast-attack craft that had completed the surface mine deployment run attempted to withdraw toward Keshem Island at 45 knots. They had been tracked continuously by an MQ-9B Sea Guardian Maritime Patrol, UAV, operating at 30,000 feet, its Lynx multimode radar maintaining resolution lock through the sea clutter. USS Roosevelt's commanding officer requested weapons release authority at 0529. Central Command released it at 0531. 2 AGM-84 Harpoon Block II missiles from Roosevelt's deck-mounted launchers came off the rails at 0532 hours local time, dropping to sea-skimming altitude and accelerating to Mach 0.9. The Harpoon's active radar seeker is designed to distinguish naval vessels from clutter in exactly the kind of coastal geography that Iran had been counting on as cover. At 0534, both missiles impacted. One fast-attack craft sank in 40 seconds. The second sustained catastrophic engine room damage and was dead in the water. The third broke off its escape run, slowed to dead slow, and broadcast a distress signal on military emergency frequency. Roosevelt's commanding officer ordered her crew taken prisoner under the law of naval warfare. 8 IRGC sailors were brought aboard at gunpoint. The mine deployment run that was supposed to seal the Strait of Hormuz had instead cost Iran a submarine, 2 fast attack craft, and 8 personnel. And the mine corridor itself was now being systematically destroyed by Sea Dragon helicopters as dawn broke over the Persian Gulf. By 0558 hours local time, the dust had not settled, but the tactical outcome was clear. The IRGC's Scorched Tides plan had rested on 3 assumptions: that American surface assets could be trapped behind a mine barrier, that the Ghadir submarine could operate undetected in the shallow strait environment, and that the confusion of simultaneous missile launches across the theater would delay a coherent response long enough for the minefield to become a permanent strategic fact. All 3 assumptions were wrong. The Virginia-class submarine's persistent undersea presence maintained in total silence for 11 hours before the Iranian plan even began, had already invalidated the IRGC's entire underwater strategy before the first mine hit the seafloor. The B-21 stealth penetration of Iran's most sophisticated air defense corridor had destroyed the command and control nerve center that would have coordinated the second wave of the operation. And the Navy's rapid mine countermeasures response had transformed what the IRGC's naval planners calculated as a 6-week clearing operation into a 40-hour one. In the aftermath, 23 of the 81 Fateh 313 ballistic missiles launched at the Carl Vinson strike group were intercepted by SM-3 Block 1IA. 3 penetrated the outer defensive ring and were destroyed by SM-2 terminal defense shooters. 4 were degraded by EA-18G Growler electronic jamming and impacted open water. The remaining 51 struck the carrier strike group's designated dispersion area, a zone of empty ocean designated specifically for this contingency in the strike group's ballistic missile defense planning annex. Not one sailor was killed. The Shahed 136 drones targeting Ali al-Salam Air Base were defeated at a 91% intercept rate by the Patriot PAC-3 battery and its attached CU-PID engagement processing node. 2 drones penetrated the outer cordon and were destroyed by CIWS close-in weapon systems. 4 IRGC drone operators were killed when an Air Force MQ-9 Reaper tracked their emissions back to a launch site near Bandar Lenga and put 2 GBU-12 Paveway laser-guided bombs directly through the facility's roof at 0547. In Moscow, the Kremlin's intelligence services were watching every data stream from the engagement. Russia had supplied the very mine design specifications used by the IRGC for the EM-52 deployment, information later confirmed by Ukrainian military intelligence intercepts. What the Kremlin saw was what every military analyst in Washington, Tel Aviv, and Beijing saw. The American integrated naval air response had operated across 5 simultaneous domains without a single coordination failure, achieving tactical decision superiority over Iran's most prepared asymmetric naval operation in 40 years. In under 57 minutes from first missile launch. The Strait of Hormuz was not closed, it was contested, and the difference between those 2 words was now measured in the wreckage of 2 fast attack craft, a surfaced Iranian submarine, and the smoldering ruins of an underground command bunker that had taken 7 years to build. What does this mean for the next 72 hours? The 82nd Airborne is on the ground. The USS Boxer is 21 days out with the full combat power of the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit. And Iran's naval command structure has just lost its most senior admiral and its most capable coastal warfare planning cell in the same morning. The Hormuz crisis is not over. But for the first time since this war began, Iran no longer controls what happens in the strait. The question is not whether Iran can close it. The question is whether anyone, in Washington, in Tehran, or in Beijing, understands what happens if someone miscalculates and tries to open it by force. Because the next engagement may not end with prisoners and empty ocean. It may end with something the world has not seen since the Second World War: the destruction of a nation's entire naval force in a single operational sequence. Stay sharp. The strait is 33 miles wide at its narrowest point, and right now, the world's most dangerous stretch of water is patrolled by people who have already proven they are very good at their jobs. Would you like to know how the AN/SQQ-89 sonar suite tracked the Ghadir submarine through the shallow water acoustic environment of the Persian Gulf?